but I don't know what to do with my life. Why should I be alive?
It's a wake-up call.
Caregiving is as emotional as financial. There's a social aspect of it. Isolation, communities, we are becoming more and more nuclear, but are we geared up towards this? This is where stigmatization plays a role. Elder care is not healthcare. Elder care is holistic care.
According to United Nations, the number of people aged 60 plus compared to those aged 15 to 59 is projected to double by 2050.
This is a very valuable section of the society that we are talking about.
And I think there's also a little stigma attached to
Geriatrics as a field really has to catch up. Financial abuse is one of the biggest underspoken topics. The whole image of a good child is complicated. It's a problem because we have not planned for it. The whole conversations have changed around lifespan versus health span.
We always emphasize on life insurance and how an early planning is never too late.
Aging is no longer an abstract concept. Elder care as an industry is not really about just the silver economy, but it's so much to do with socialization.
What do you think is the trigger, or what is that time when families should start planning for elder care for their parents, even for themselves?
Giving a bath to a 90-year-old is very different from giving a bath to a 60-year-old. Everyone above 70 has one comorbidity or the other. I mean, 70% of elders have at least 2 comorbidities.
Aging and aging with dignity is really important. Never too early to start for your financial planning,
Blood tests हो गए, investigations हो गई, डॉक्टर के पास ले गए, ये हमारा टिक एरिया है. Lot of elders like क्या करेंगे ठीक होके? Memory is a very big aspect that gets affected, so they may not recognize their children anymore. Boredom is often a symptom is a first trigger that I don't know what to do because I really can't engage independently.
Plan for insurance, but also plan what happens after the insurance has done its bit. Thought we all have, I've planned for my retirement, I'm done.
Mindset firstly needs to change. Is that what am I saving for? Whole financial fraud angle, right? So people misleading them because trust is so fragile, with elders.
We plan for our children's education, our homes, and even our vacations. But how often do we plan for our parents' future and our own old age? This is a dilemma that adults who are caring for aging parents often face. It's emotional, financial, and deeply human. Welcome to Depend on Insurance, Depend on Us. I'm Vatsala Sameer, Company Secretary with Canara HSBC Life Insurance. And today we're going to talk about what it really means to age and care with dignity, preparedness, and compassion. Joining me is someone who lives this subject every day, Neha Sinha, CEO of Epoch Elder Care. Welcome to the show, Neha.
Thank you, Vatsala. Such a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Beyond financial and physical health, I just wanted to understand, how do you think hobbies, social engagement, extracurricular activities can help in the mental health at an elderly age?
Vatsala, this is my passion area. I view this as important or probably more important than healthcare, as in medical healthcare. Elder care is not healthcare. Elder care is holistic care. So this is an awareness that we talk about. I explain to people a lot more that as caregivers and as children also, what happens is we tend to focus on blood tests हो गए, investigations हो गई, डॉक्टर के पास ले गए, ये हमारा टिक एरिया है, राइट? ये हमने कर लिया, then we feel very good कि हमने बड़ा अच्छा ख्याल रखा है. But क्या उन्होंने शाम को did they feel happy? क्या हमने कोई पर्पस दिया उनको ज़िंदगी में? So giving purpose, and in the Indian context, very difficult because, and I'm glad you asked this question on hobbies specifically. Indians don't have hobbies. सच में मतलब it's really a fact. Ask me also, मैं 2-3 कुछ बोल पाऊँगी.
It was a question जो बचपन में लोग बहुत पूछते थे, आपकी हॉबी क्या है? People have stopped asking and people have stopped having hobbies, I think.
Yeah, and it ends with bachpan.
Yeah, correct.
And that's the thing, that the correlation between bachpan ke hobbies and aging is so strong, I can't tell you. So जब आप 70 के बाद जब आपको purpose चाहिए होता है, and most elders are like, सब है, we have everything, but I don't know what to do with my life. Why should I be alive?
Yeah.
So that is where social connection and friendship and community. इसीलिए कई बार children force parents कि नहीं, मेरे guilt के लिए आप मेरे साथ आके रहिए. we moved them from a tier 2 city. But is that always the right decision? I don't know.
True, true.
So things like that, things like individually equipping technology. So technology is not necessarily a bad thing, and we can use it. कि आप उनको empower कैसे कर सकते हैं, कि आप उनको Zoom सिखाइए, आप उनको Instagram, whatever ways in feeling engaged. And more importantly, there are so many cognitive games, there are so many brain health exercises that you can do through these things, and that there also you can feel, आपने competition कर लिया कि अच्छा ठीक है आपका कितना score है. So there are a zillion ways in keeping our brain health. So hobbies, activities, social engagement, community, they are directly linked to brain health. That's an area that I work in, and there is scientific evidence that if you engage with purpose and you engage every day, your cognitive health remains very good.
True. I think हम लोग को अपनी checklist में while talking to our parents ये भी पूछ लेना चाहिए आज आपने क्या किया.
Right.
Did you see this? Did you make new friends on Facebook, etc.? I think very important. And this generation is the one, उन्होंने कितना कुछ कर रखा है in their lives, from where
They've
they
been
are
so
today.
busy and
They've been
active.
so busy
Yeah.
कि suddenly they're not कुछ करने को मिल नहीं रहा उन्हें.
Yeah, and also I'll add over here the difference of aging. So feminization of aging is also very acute, which means that so women outlive, and many a times that's a different problem, which is how do you deal with single elderly women who outlive men for various reasons, mostly biological as well as social. But men, when they age and they retire from that positions in life, still in the current elderly generation, they really struggle with that identity crisis. And these are unsaid factors and risk factors in cardiac health, in neurological health, and truly in your prognosis of any condition that you have, because when you don't have the will to kind of rehabilitate yourself. Let's say you've had a fall, and this is an example that I give a lot. You've had a fall, you really need the will to do physiotherapy, because physiotherapy is both mental and physical. सिर्फ exercise करने से नहीं होता है. A lot of elders like क्या करेंगे ठीक होके, but क्या करेंगे इसका जवाब find करना ज़रूरी है, because it's not about existing.
Yeah. Very important. Also, there's another reality we need to address, one that I think is affecting millions of families silently and not many are aware of it, is cognitive impairment and dementia.
Dementia is a neurological condition, but it has psychiatric symptoms, which is why it falls, it overlaps in both. So first thing is a lot of misconceptions on dementia, which means a lot of people would think that ये पागल हो गए और इनका मानसिक संतुलन ठीक नहीं है, but that's not true. It's a brain disease. It happens because our neurons die. To put it very simply, right? But the symptoms can be behavioral and psychiatric in nature. So it can be treatable by neurologists and a psychiatrist both. Now impairment, there are many aspects of managing dementia, but the single important thing to keep in mind is it's a long duration that we are looking at. So we are looking at a span of at least 8 to 10 years minimum, right? And it only progresses, it deteriorates and so on. So the burden is immense, and the biggest burden we talk about is purely on the caregiver, because once the person who has dementia really goes into in a way a bubble, doesn't really understand where they are. Our work is to ensure that they are happy, basic parameters are fine, there are no infections, healthcare is taken care of and all of that purpose, everything we discuss. But really the burden falls on the child, because first you're looking at your parent, slowly lose their identity. The memory is a very big aspect that gets affected, so they may not recognize their children anymore. So it's very it's very complex, that how do I continue to care for someone who's so angry towards me, who actually asks me aap kaun ho. So that is one aspect. Second is the long term planning that we have been discussing, the caregiver to healthcare. One infection in dementia can have a very different impact than an infection in someone who's younger or without this diagnosis. So healthcare costs compute and compound, and they can become exorbitant. Right, so this, then third is how do you have a caregiver, you have figured out healthcare, but if a person with dementia is not really engaged properly, then you see behavioral challenges.
True.
So the person gets abusive, the person doesn't want to sit in a place, so all those aspects end up putting so much stress. It is something which needs to be really thought through. It's not a drawing room conversation really, it needs to happen at the policy level. needs to happen at at the community level. It needs a 360-degree approach.
So you're saying dementia is silent, but it's real. How big do you think is the problem in India?
If you talk about numbers, it's really big, staring at our face right here. You're talking about 8 to 10 million.
Wow.
And this is, this number is so huge that it's even difficult to comprehend. Of course, and these are diagnosed cases, these are reported cases. In rural areas, you will just write this off as part of aging. The term satya gaye hain, so commonly used, but now that you think about it, so the fact for us to remember, myth versus facts, if I was to say, does every 90-year-old behave strangely? Or this is how a 90-year-old should behave. But this is a myth. 90-year-old should behave like you and me.
Correct.
Unless there is a diagnosis.
True.
So we work and we see and we meet many 90 and 95-year-olds who are as sharp or sharper than me, that I can say. So therefore, if something is not right, if something is, you think something is quote unquote weird, then that needs an investigation. So it is silent, but it affects us in ways that we don't even know. We just sweep it under the carpet.
Staggering numbers and harsh realities, I must say. For listeners who may not fully understand, could you tell us exactly what dementia entails? What is it exactly?
Dementia is neurological in nature, but it has symptoms which are behavioral and psychiatric. So, it can be misunderstood for a mental health illness, but there is a huge overlap in mental health illness. What happens is it starts with memory loss, but the key to remember is it starts with short-term memory loss, which means for the longest time, even in a stage 5 or 6, there are 8 stages, I will remember where I was born, who my parents are, who my childhood friend was. I will just not remember what I had for breakfast and who I met in the morning. So a lot of people confuse ki nahi memory to bahut achhi hai inki. So that's not the case. It starts with short-term memory loss and confusion and withdrawal. So these are all which can be written off as one-time events. So you may think ऐसे ही confuse हो गए. You may think कि चुप-चुप गुमसुम बैठे हैं. So boredom is often a symptom of, is a first trigger that I don't know what to do because I really can't engage independently. And then I stop engaging, I stop coming to the dining table. I stop saying कि नहीं आप जाओ शादी में, मुझे मेरा मन नहीं कर रहा है. So simple examples, I can't do multiple conversations. I can do one-on-one conversation. I can follow. I stop watching TV because I can't remember last episode में क्या हुआ था. I can't process visual and audio cues. So it starts with this. It starts with the chai becoming a little more kadwi. It starts with namak double dal gaya. It starts with bill bharna bhul gaye. But these are all red flags which can be normal, can happen to us because we are stressed. But when it happens to someone above 60, it's a screening that is required. Then eventually it is basically a disease that takes away the ability for you to process information. Okay. So essentially I can't comprehend the world around me, and it's very I need to live a very, very simple, easy life, and lack of judgment, attention span, all of that kicks in. So it's complex more for the family members witnessing it.
Sure.
If you're able to understand the disease and create a good care plan, the person who has dementia has the ability to lead a very good quality of life. And that's what really the world needs to know.
So I think what you're saying is that families need to be watchful, look for these little symptoms, and then what do you think should they be doing if they do, observe such symptoms in relatives who are elderly around them?
So first and foremost is early diagnosis. If you don't do an early screening, if you come to a professional at a stage 5, there's very little intervention that can be done. So prognosis can be very good. In fact, all the research that is happening in the field of treatment of dementia is subject to the fact that you come to a professional in literally the first 2 stages.
Oh, wow.
And therefore it requires us to be extremely, extremely alert, and I feel it's more instinctive ki, this doesn't seem normal in mom. So we should, the moment we have that thought, it should be investigated. So once we have a diagnosis, truly understanding, educating ourselves, and really if I give you a healthcare example, oncology has gone through that drill. So in the 50s and 40s, people would be like, oh my God, cancer. But everything from awareness to policy to community support to insurance, everything fell into place. Today we feel much more equipped to deal with cancer. It's the same journey that needs to happen with dementia in this country.
Okay.
So we do awareness, and then of course training of everyone and healthcare professionals, solutions and various solutions, not just homes, at home care, in-home care, club made, daycare center, activity centers, everything needs to be in place. And like I said, I have great hope. I have seen many elders lead good quality of life for 5, 6, 8 years even after diagnosis. So it's very much possible.
So I think the message is clear. Plan early, document everything, and don't wait for the late symptoms. You know, go seek professional help as soon as you can. Neha, थोड़ा reality check करते हैं. Let's try to bust some myths where, you know, people that keep people from preparing well in advance. Now, a typical thought that सबके पास होता है कि oh, my parents have, or I have health insurance for my old age, I'm taken care of, or my parents have been taken care of. Is that really the facts?
So biggest myth that needs to be busted. A lot of people experience it, and it always comes as a shock, right, and a surprise. So insurance plans are always focused on hospitalizations, right? So they are focused on serious ailments, they are focused on, you know, acute events, and that's where the problem starts, because problems in old age, yes, 20 to 30% will fall under the bucket, but 70% really falls on what happens post, and that is what is not covered under insurance, right?
Very true.
So if you talk about prioritization of a product design, insurance really should first look at in-home care. So this is something that the industry has really been, you know, talking about, is that the coverage of that in-home carer, because not everyone will move into a home, right? And long-term care and assisted living, there are examples, etc., in countries in the US and so on, where there are models that do it. But in India, we need to understand that we will age, we would like to age in our homes, and we need to solutionize for that. And therefore, the in-home services, that is everything, not just the caregiver, but also the physiotherapist who comes in, the doctor who comes in, any specialist who comes in for a procedure and so on, that is something which needs to come under this. Apart from that, I think, like, if I talk about memory care, which includes everything, right, from memory screening, going to memory clinics, going to daycare centers, the whole aspect of looking after someone with a chronic condition for 15 years, let's say Parkinson's, where physiotherapy is such an integral part. So things like these need to be comprehensively covered so that the out-of-pocket truly needs to be reduced.
True.
Yeah.
So I think what we need to do is that, you know, plan for insurance, but also plan what happens after the insurance has done its bit.
Right.
You know?
Right. Absolutely.
So, yeah. And there's another thought we all have, ki I've like planned for my retirement, I'm done. My retirement planning is enough. Is it really enough?
So it depends on the definition of what you think you have done. Right?
Mostly it's financial, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. But even in financial, so there are segments, you know, if I think of it, if I have to break it up, so retirement planning between 50 to 70 is different, but once you are in the, you know, 75 and above segment, then that is when, you know, let's say asset classes which you can't liquidate, you know, you are, so there's a term which is used, which is property rich and cash poor, which is very commonly used for elders, is so true.
Very true.
Lot of properties, lot of assets, but, you know, I can't afford to have my 24/7 caregiver. So I think that is what is really sad. People who come from, you know, very, you know, kind of, they have good resources, they are, you know, they have, you know, they have generational wealth basically. But that generational wealth doesn't translate into having the good, you know, good solutions or good quality of life in the last decade when I needed the most.
Yeah.
So the mindset firstly needs to change. Is that what am I saving for? Right? Earlier the mindset was very clear. I am saving for my children.
Yeah.
I am saving for a house. I am
Purpose
saving
tha.
for, बहुत clear था, right? But now the pressure is of course much more, because you are saving for many other things that we don't even know what will happen. So as an example, by the way, for dementia, these injections have come in. which have, which you can start using, and it's a very, very big breakthrough in the scientific world, in the scientific community, where you can start using them early on. But in India, these injections are extremely expensive, right? Because they are not accessible. When I was in the US understanding about this, so they were saying that people who have the wealth, actually, because some states had approved it and some states hadn't, so they were flying in. So they had, at least they had savings and planning that if I have to take that injection, then I have the ability to take that monthly flight, or I have the ability to take that weekly flight. So it comes in various ways where we won't be prepared for. Kabhi kuch ho gaya, solution nikal bhi gaya. But liquidity, in my opinion, is very important. So diversification in how we plan is important. And I think you guys are the experts here.
I know. So I think what best an example but life insurance when it comes to liquidity, and when you need money, when you need the most. Your pension plans, your whole life plans. I think that's something that people really need to start talking about and really need to start planning, and early on, like we had started, mentioned in the start of the episode, early on is the key.
Right. Another instrument, Vatsala, is reverse mortgages, which I didn't talk about. So it's not a product which is very popular in India, but it's a very, very popular solution used in the West. Is basically when you have your equity in the house, your properties, how do you use that to finance your long-term care planning? I think if we are able to work on this, India will have, it'll make life easier for so many people.
True. And like we had spoken, with longevity happening, becoming a reality, the retirement age or the retirement period is longer than what it used to be. Like now you have to plan for a long 30, for all 40-year also. So yeah, the retirement planning is really not as simple as it used to be. Really, it's complex, and financial के ऊपर बहुत सारे aspects है which you need to take care of.
Financial, and मुझे लगता है कि this area of expertise, you need experts who specialize in this. So this is a different field altogether. So जो wealth management करते हैं, this is a very responsible thing, and who come and advise our elders on, let's say, will planning, estate management. जब आप ये सब करते हैं तो इसमें you take into account कि what are all the scenarios. Scenario building is very critical, and hence, like, we understand this and we know that it's completely independent in nature, but the elders today, the reliance on their children is very, very high, and children have all the good intent, but they are not here. Many people are not here. True. Right? So if you're not physically present, then solutioning
there's only so much you can do.
There's only so much you can do, right? And then the other aspect which really scares me is the whole financial fraud angle, right? So people misleading them, because trust is so fragile, with elders, and also very easily, you can easily gain it and break it, right? But many caregivers can misuse it, right? Somebody who has been visiting, somebody who has, you have many examples of people misusing trust, and that's where I think financial institutions play a very important role कि आप safeguarding कैसे करें, आप awareness कैसे करें, आप trust कैसे लें, so that the elderly is not going to anyone else, knows that these are the experts and these are the people who can advise me कि what I need to do.
True. I think from what I hear, planning for old age is so much more than money, and there is so much that the society and the governments and financial institutions can actually do. Yeah, now let's explore some what if scenarios, because I think that's where reality actually hits. So let's imagine, what if there is a 65-year-old matriarch, previously very healthy, and he's suddenly diagnosed with a critical illness requiring continuous care for years? What is a family, you think? What as a family should one do?
So first and foremost, educate yourself about what would be the course of this illness. So, are we looking at a progressive illness? Are we just looking at management? So something as benign as diabetes, for example, but with a comorbidity can become complex. But diabetes in itself, it's going to be there lifelong. You have to manage it well. And so on. But something like a Parkinson's or a dementia, it's going to become worse and worse. So the first thing is equip yourself, know what it is going to be like, and therefore, seek professional help. So let's not try to be, you know, supermen and superwomen. We should seek professional help, and there are fairly, you know, there are fair good number of people who are there, who are experts, you know, who will be able to give a comprehensive view on what needs to be done. In my opinion, a geriatrician is one person who should give an additional view over and above the specialist, because a geriatrician is trained differently, is trained to look at a holistic and comprehensive view and not just a systems view. So first is that. Second is, you know, to what extent can I take the load of caregiving? So that's because I need to preserve my mental bandwidth.
True.
So immediately with that diagnosis, there are two patients. You know, in a way, a person and myself. And for how long? And again, I should not be overconfident, guilt, expectations, what society will think, what my brother will think, all of that, you know, needs to be kept aside, and practically you need to think what's practically possible for me that will work for me. And I need to ensure that my mental health is in the right space to deal with this, because you're not talking about an event. For an event, you can always get help, you know it will become better, you know the light at the end of the tunnel in a way. In this case, how do I divide my caregiving load? Do I divide it with family or do I divide it with professionals? One needs to be very clear about it. So, and sometimes, you know, we should accept facts that, okay, you know, maybe my sibling is not in the country, you know, my other relatives I expected, but we should move on. I believe in being extremely pragmatic about it, because the more you think about it, the more complex it gets. So caregiving is the second angle. You prepare for it emotionally, you prepare for it financially, right? Third is, you know, do your homework in service providers, because it is not very structured, it's not very regulated, so you might end up opting for the, you know, wrong options, which you know, may leave a bad taste, and then again it goes into a spiral. So I think do the homework with the help of a professional, take references of people who have used services. So I think some amount of due diligence is good, especially if you are going to have a carer at home, if you are not going to be there, and so on. Again, the whole trust, safety aspect. And then I think finally, you know, don't overthink it, because life is unpredictable. It's your health first, apna mask pehle pehne, and then figure out the plan for your elder. And lastly, agar nahi ho raha hai, accept it. Accept it, look for a professional solution. You know, seek, maybe go to an elder care home. You can go to an elder care home on a temporary basis also. You know, you need respite.
Yes.
Okay, give yourself that respite. Go for that vacation, right? So do that, and then come back and take it. So there are many solutions. You have to look for it. You have to ask for help.
So I think 3 takeaways that I'll take from this is that one, जो शुरुआत कहाँ से होगी is being aware, seeking professional help, and maintaining your mental balance and being, you know, preparedness for it. And another common scenario that you're seeing these days a lot, Neha, is with couples, you know, who they're calling themselves dinks, double income, no kids. It's very difficult, you know, when you lose one partner and you're suddenly left alone with nobody to look after you, nobody to turn to.
Yeah.
How do you think such couples should prepare themselves?
Yeah, I think it's really a thought-provoking scenario. I wouldn't call it scary, because everything can be solutionized for. So here, obviously, the first thought that comes to my mind is ensure that you have your community around, because you will find solutions for everything else, right? You can plan your finances, you can plan for you know, other services, you can plan for healthcare. What you can't predict are people and connections. And at the end of the day, for this scenario, when you're left alone, loneliness is the main problem, right? And in fact, loneliness is the crux of the problem, not just in India. It's a global phenomena. In fact, in India, I'll say we are still better, because there are still a feeling of neighborhood community. You can still step out, you still know, you tend to know who the neighbor is, and so on. But in Western countries, this is being solved by you know AI and robots and, you know, pet companions and all of that. So people are have to be creative when you're looking at that. But isolation can be, fatal in a way, if I have to put it, because depression in elderly, geriatric depression, again, underreported, undiagnosed, but very, very problematic, takes away the will for you to live, the will for you to, kind of solve for, get up and do the right thing. So I would say in this situation, pick a place and physical place. Think about where you want to be. Think what kind of a setup do you want to be. Don't leave that for the last moment. जब होगा तब देखा जाएगा.
Time की बात है.
हाँ.
Early
Because
on.
either you will go or the other person will go.
True.
उसकी planning आप आज करिए कि ये situation होता है. Next day I know in a way what to do.
बहुत ज़रूरी है. So that early on planning, I think we're just going back to the same point again and again, but it's that much more important. Thank you so much, Neha, for being here. Thank you for that insightful conversation.
Thank you.
And if I could just take a minute and walk down to the dependability wall with us, we'll just sign a few planters.
Sure.
Thank you, Neha. This has been an extremely insightful conversation. We know a lot of things, but when somebody tells you, you just tend to think more, and I'm sure our listeners would benefit. Our listeners would get back to the drawing board and start planning better. So thank you so much for taking our time and being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vatsala. It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
We've talked today about infrastructure gaps, family strain, and the rising costs of elderly care. Now here's a question every family must answer. Are we ready? By 2050, India's elderly population will reach 319 million. That's 1 in every 5 Indians will be over 60 years. Most families are walking into this future blind, unprepared for care costs that can drain retirement savings in just a few years. But financial preparation is actually the bridge between struggle and security. Long-term care insurance protects what you've built. Annuities ensure steady income into your 90s. Legal planning prevents family chaos. It's actually not about pessimism, it's about protection. Because when it comes to caring for those who cared for you, preparation is the greatest act of love. Plan early, protect wisely, and depend on insurance.
Canara HSBC Life Insurance. Promises का partner.